I want you to imagine the terrifying moment that you log into your financial institutions and you find your investment accounts or bank account drained. Well, that's what happens to millions of people. So, understanding financial security is really no longer optional. And so, in this video, I want to focus on what are the different ways that you can protect yourself. Because shockingly, most people don't. And we're going to talk about where common pitfalls are and how you can fix them. Okay, so being smart with your financial security is really not optional. And let me show you some reasons why. So, just theft of money in and of itself. Last year, over $47 billion of theft occurred through scams and fraud. So, fraud is actually going up, and it's only going to get worse with technology as it becomes easier to create compelling scams with AI. And then, as we age and we don't keep up with all the technology, it becomes easier to fall prey to these things. What's worse is that there's also theft of privacy and information that just feeds into how hackers and thieves can steal your money. So, half of all people have already had their information leaked in the last 5 years. In fact, there's a statistic that more data has been compromised, about 350 to 60 million people's information than the entire population in the US. So it's not a great landscape. So, what do you do to protect yourself? The five things that we're going to do is building a strong wall, and we'll get into what that means. We'll talk about privacy and why it's important to account security. We're going to talk about not being a weak link in your security process. We're going to talk about how to compartmentalize. And then lastly, what a monitoring plan looks like. Okay, so let's talk about building a strong wall. Here you have your hacker on the left and you have your bank of money on the right. And what we want to do is we want to create a brick wall that stops that hacker from getting to your money. The problem is that most people fail at even this first step. And here's some statistics for you. 65% of people reuse the same password, meaning that they're using the password at one website that they use at another website. So if you reuse a password on one site and that website is breached, a lot of the time that password can be reused at different sites. Even worse, over 50% of people, and we're going to get into what this means, do not use two factor authentication on their financial accounts. And it's worse in older age groups. So it makes it really easy for a hacker to get information about one account that you might not care a lot about. Maybe it's some random forum website you got onto 10 years ago, to then say, well, where is this password reused so that I can try it in different accounts that are important to you, like your finances. Now, I'm going to show you the solutions for even these basic steps. But first, what's really critical for you to understand is how hacking happens in the first place. And so here we have our hacker again, and you have a brick wall and you have your bank. But what happens? So a hacker goes out and they look at what your digital footprint is. And your digital footprint contains all of the things that you do online. And so much of that is leaked into the dark web as different websites don't have good security. Corporations aren't really held accountable for the data they leak. And so your footprint is out there. And what they're looking at are what information can I get on this person that I can then start triangulating to financial accounts. Okay, so here's the big first problem. If you have the same email, password, or username that you have on your digital footprint that you share with your financial institutions, then they can use that or try to use it to get into your financial account. Okay, so the next problem is that if I don't have the same password with my financial institution, the hacker's then going to look at, well, how can I get into their cell phone service or their email account so that I can backdoor into their financial institution? So, for instance, let's say a hacker goes to your online financial account and says, hey, I forgot my password. What happens? Typically, the password reset is going to go to an email address on file. Well, if that hacker is inside of your email address, they have all of the keys that they need to be able to start getting into your accounts. Now, what's a really strong way to prevent this from happening? So, adding two factor authentication into your security process can block a lot of this bad activity. So, what two factor authentication does is it doesn't just require a password, but it requires something else that you possess to validate before you can get into an account. So even if a hacker had your email and your password and they were able to reset it with your email address, you would still have two factor authentication that would try to block the access. But here's the problem with that. So if you have your two factor authentication, which is like, hey, when I try to log in, you get a text message on your phone and you share that 6-digit code back with the website. If you have your two factor authentication with your cell phone provider, What happens if the hacker takes over your cell phone account? Well, then they can get through that two factor authentication and then they get into your bank account. So, this is really critical for you to understand how these different things happen so that you can start creating your security plan. Okay, so for building your strong wall, the first thing that you need is a strong password. And for this, password managers are really non negotiable in 2025. So, if you don't have a password manager today, I highly recommend that you get one. Now, full disclosure, before I get into the different solutions for passwords and all of the solutions that we're going to talk about in securing yourself, I want to disclose I actually got my first affiliate for this channel. And it's an affiliate that I've used for over the last 5 years to help secure so many of my accounts. And that is Proton. They're a company based out of Switzerland. And their core principle and business focus is on privacy. And because of their core principles, it really focuses on what my channel is about, which is wealth, not greed, which prioritizes not profit, but people first. It's a company that I've relied on and used over many years. And so if you decide to buy any of their services through the link below, the channel makes a little bit of money. So that's kind of cool. I've never done that before and we'll see how it works. Now, in almost all of the solutions, I'm going to share alternatives because this is not just a Proton paid advertisement. It's what I like to use. My primary goal is for you to be able to protect yourself financially, regardless of what service provider you decide to use. But I do feel really comfortable recommending Proton because that's what I've used for so long. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me talk about what I would recommend. So these are the three main contenders, at least in my mind. I like Bitwarden and Proton Pass, both because they have free options and upgrades. One Password and Proton Pass are similar in price if you're just buying a password manager. Proton Pass and Bitwarden are open source, meaning that you can actually see the code that they're based on. So this gives you an enhanced understanding of actually how the programs operate. So that can be helpful just to have increased transparency. All three of these I would feel comfortable recommending. The fourth one I would definitely not recommend, and that is LastPass. LastPass in 2022 had an incredibly damaging breach that I was a victim of, where people actually lost money because they didn't change their passwords after the breach. Let me just talk about what you want to do with your password. So, you never want to use the same password for multiple sites. So, a password manager is going to allow you to create strong passwords. And strong means I have, 20 characters that are complex. I'm not using some type of commonly guessed phrase or word. They're also going to help you change passwords as often as you want. So my focus is on changing my passwords at least once a year. So what that does is if there's ever a breach where your information is getting out there, you're going to have new passwords that hopefully aren't usable by someone trying to get into your accounts. So all of these are going to have multi-device support. So I would get a password manager on your computer at home, on your phone, on your browser, so that anytime you open up a new account, it's in your password manager. You're able to customize the password and move on. The goal is really having unique, strong passwords that change often in your financial accounts. Okay, so let's go to the next part of the wall, which is your email and the usernames that you use. So, what you never want to do is in this picture here, where you have one email that's used in multiple accounts. Going back to the hacker example, if someone has your digital footprint and your email account leaks, on the dark web, then a hacker can try that email in multiple different accounts. The goal is to have one email address tied to one account, especially around your important ones. So there's some different ways you can do this, but I'm going to share how I actually do it with Proton. So with Proton Mail, you can create one account but have 10 different aliases. And your aliases are unique email addresses that you can create all wrapped up into one account. So you could create an alias for one account and then another alias for another account. You can also, through Proton Pass, create an alias that masks the email address you use when you sign up. And so that protects the email address that you might usually have vulnerable from being exposed in an information breach. Now, one thing that's really critical is that whatever you choose, Proton or another email provider, make sure that you have notifications set up on this email address. So, what's almost worse than having one email to multiple accounts is to create a new email address that you don't have access to or are going to forget to check. Because if your financial account ever gets hijacked, you're going to miss all of the notifications alerting you to potential suspicious activity if you use an email address that you never see. So, regardless of what you go with, just make sure that if you set up an email for a specific account, It's an email address that you have access to and you're going to get alerts from. That's why I like Proton because it's all wrapped up in one. So even if I don't look at that specific email address very often, I'm still going to get alerts. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what two-factor authentication is. The first factor is just something that you know. So an example is a password or a PIN code. The problem with one factor authentication, meaning I'm getting into an account with just that, if you use the same password at a different site and that information's leaked somewhere, and the only factor you have protecting your financial accounts is that information, they can get in. So, what does two factor do? Well, it adds a new key. So, imagine that you have a lock with, or two different locks with two different keys. You need the second key to be able to get in. So, a second factor is typically something that you have on you, you physically possess. And so, examples of a second factor could be your cell phone. So, if somebody tries to get into your account, then they would also need to have your cell phone. The weakness is, of course, could someone take what you have? So could someone take your phone? And then if they have your phone, be able to get into your account. And so let's talk about what a weak two factor authentication method is. The weakest two factor authentication is your cell phone. Please do not use your cell phone as your main two factor authentication protection. Why is this so bad? Because you're relying on your cell phone carrier to be the strongest link in your security chain. So what happens is the hacker just goes around and they hijack your cell phone. Well, how do they do this? So if they can get into your cell phone account, you can change what's known as the SIM card. And this is what's called SIM hijacking. So if I take your SIM card and I reprogram it to a SIM card that I have, well, now I get all of your text messages. So what hackers will do is they'll hijack your cell phone account. They'll use their own SIM card and their own phone, and now all of the alerts and the codes that you need to get into accounts are sent straight to that phone that the hacker has. So now the second factor, the something you don't have it anymore because they took your phone number. So this is really risky. I do not recommend that you use a cell phone to authenticate your financial accounts. So a stronger option is a software authenticator. So I like both Microsoft Authenticator and Google Authenticator. So you can look those up online, download them, and then you can associate them with your financial accounts. Now, of course, that means that you need strong protection on those authenticators as well so that somebody can't get into them, but they're much more secure than a cell phone. Now, the strongest one is what's called a YubiKey. So a YubiKey is almost like a little USB device that you actually physically have on you, and you plug it into a computer or you can tap it on a phone, and it actually does the authentication that way. And so the cool thing about a physical YubiKey is, if somebody steals your phone, they still have to have the physical YubiKey to get into anything. And that realistically prevents almost all fraud unless someone's breaking into your house, stealing your YubiKey, or you can even have a second one, maybe at a safe deposit box if you get really into security. But the problem with YubiKey is that it's not supported everywhere. In particular, I'll call out Fidelity. Fidelity does not have a YubiKey set up, but I believe Vanguard does. So you want to look at your financial institutions to see which of these solutions is supported. But realistically, 99.9% of most hacks are going to be stopped if you at least have a Microsoft or Google software authenticator. So if you're going to at least not have a two-factor authentication, then at least do a cell phone authenticator. Anything is better than just one-factor authentication. Okay, so this is a really critical concept to understand in your security. So what we've been talking about is how to compartmentalize your different accounts. And so what does that mean? The goal is that you don't have one account that compromises all of your other accounts. Here on the left, you can see if I have this one account in red that's hacked, my goal is that all of the other accounts I have aren't impacted because they have different passwords and usernames and emails. What happens to most people, it's this other way where if you use the same information on everything and one account gets hacked, they really all get hacked. And so that's where we're really focused on having these individual setups. Now, one thing I do want to call out is that if you have a lot of your eggs in one basket with someone, you really need to make sure that that one single point of failure is incredibly strong and resilient. So you have the most security and focus on that one if it's the most critical. The next one is never share the same security questions when you're compartmentalizing. And so security questions are incredibly weak forms of security. The problem is if you can reset a password by answering a question like your mother's maiden name or things that most people can find based on the breached information that's out there, they're able to get into your account. So one, I don't like to do business with companies that have not updated their security and they're basing their security on a security question. It's a terrible form of security. But if they do have security questions, you really want to treat it like a password and have some made up thing that nobody else knows that's specific to that one account. That, if somebody knows your mother's maiden name, they can't get into 10 different accounts that all share that same answer. So that's something that you can set up in your password manager. Okay, so let's talk about privacy after you've built your wall. And this is really thinking about what information do I have out there and how do I limit exposure to the amount of data that I have out there? And so I'm focused on this in three ways. First is just never use a public computer. So if you go to a library or something else to use a computer, never log in with sensitive account information. That computer could have a virus on it. Then everything that you type in there could be tracked. You just don't want to use a public computer for anything sensitive. But then we also have to think about all of the devices that we use, they leave a footprint. And so you can kind of think about like a car driving. So your car is your data. Your data is seen by different people. Now, this first one might bother you, it might not, but your traffic is seen by your internet service provider. But what's more critical is if you use Wi-Fi, especially public Wi-Fi, there can be a risk that your data is being snooped on by someone that's looking at your Wi-Fi traffic. So if you do business at a coffee shop or if you log in to your financial accounts in a public Wi-Fi, you really want to protect yourself from that. The second one is if you have a free service and you're using it, then you are the product. And what does that mean? So it typically means that if someone is offering you a free service or account, they're doing something with the data in that account to make money off of it. And so if it's free, you and the data that you have are the product. So one of the things that I like to look at are what services do I use? So for instance, like a Google Gmail account, it has unencrypted endpoints. And so information in these accounts could be seen by a third party. Other areas that are not encrypted, like Google Drive or anything that you store in most cloud accounts, are also not encrypted. And I don't want to go too deep into this subject because it starts to get into just privacy and what you believe about privacy and who should have access to your data and gets a little bit farther away from the focus, which is just securing your financial accounts. The critical thing is that if you have financial data stored in these services, you want to make sure it's not something that a hacker or someone browsing your web data could see. And then you should be really thoughtful about what information you're putting out there on social media and other platforms that someone could use against you if they wanted to try to get into your account. Okay, so what do I use? So I like to use what's known as a VPN. Many people probably heard of a VPN, so this might not be new to you. But what a VPN does is you can think about it like a tunnel. So if your car is your data, like in this picture up here, it would be like your car goes into a tunnel and nobody can see what's happening inside that tunnel. So it encrypts your data so that people can't snoop on it, especially like in a public Wi Fi. And it even masks your location. So you can change your VPN location. Maybe it looks like I'm in Europe or a different part of the world. So this just helps protect you from being seen by someone that could have a bad intention. None of these are silver bullets in and of themselves, but together it starts to create a system that helps protect you from people that would mean to do you harm and try to steal your money. The next one is if you're going to have sensitive financial or personal information uploaded in the cloud or on a service online, just make sure that it is encrypted somewhere. So an unencrypted email account that has sensitive information, you do not want that. It would be better to have like a physical copy or something that's not connected to a cloud or internet service if it's very, very sensitive. But if you're going to, make sure it's encrypted. And here again, I'll give a plug to Proton because again, this is what I personally use. So I use Proton VPN. It's easy to install on your phone and your computer. It connects in one click. And so I know that my traffic is protected from people that might try to snoop on me. Proton Drive is an alternative to Google Drive. It's an encrypted drive. Nobody has access to that data but you. So that's also protected. And we talked a little bit about Proton Mail already, which I use to be able to create different aliases so that my different financial accounts are decentralized. Now, there's plenty of other VPN providers out there. You can look at NordVPN and different providers. Honestly, I just haven't used anything but Proton. So Proton's always worked for me. Like I said, it's privacy focused. I like that they're in Switzerland. The one thing I'll say about VPN is if you don't go with Proton, just look at who that company is because you are trusting that wherever your data goes, it's going through that tunnel that that company owns the VPN on. So you do need to have some level of trust that they themselves have ways to protect your data and they adhere to certain privacy rules. I would not use a VPN that's free. I don't like the idea that a free VPN could be potentially profiting off of something that I'm doing. The very small cost of paying for a paid VPN service, regardless if it's Proton or something else, is well worth it. Okay, so here's the problem with all of this. So you can have the best security. You can build all of these ways to protect yourself. You can do your privacy, two-factor authentication, individual password and usernames, and it will all not matter if you don't do this next part. So the next part is to not be a weak link. So the problem is that security is getting so good and you can create this strong wall between you and the hacker. But what happens if instead of trying to go through the wall, they just decide and they can't get in because they try to do some attack, doesn't work. But then they just decide to go to you. And so the biggest risk is that the hacker actually targets you and they use you to be able to get into your financial accounts. And so this is what's known as scamming or phishing, to try to fish for data to get you to do something so that they can get into the accounts through you. And so this screenshot I really liked. It was actually on a Fidelity forum. Let me point out a few things. So what happens in these phishing schemes? In this example, you get a text message from this phone number, which, oh, by the way, Fidelity would never text you with a regular phone number. That's one clue. So you look at the phone number, but then you look at the message that this person received. It's intended to create an urgent emotion so that you get to do something so that in a split second, you give them the information that they want. So in this example, this scammer, they text this person and they say, hey, somebody tried to log in your account in a device we don't recognize. Now, your first reaction might be, oh my God, something's happened to my account. I need to do something. And so you can see the first thing that this person does is they respond with a message. They say no. But here's where this is terrible because this validates that the number that the scammer is texting is a real number. So now they know this person does have a Fidelity account. This person does have an active phone number. And so in this last picture, you can see where the scam starts. So they say, thank you for this transaction. Now, if you're a regular person, you're going to read this and be, what transaction? I didn't do anything. And so you're starting to get emotional, like there's a problem that you have to fix. And it says one of our representatives will be contacting you shortly. So of course, this is a scammer that's going to try to steal this person's money. I mean, it's really evil. And so let's talk about how to protect yourself so that you don't fall prey to these people. So the first thing is to understand is that there's always a new scam. This is like a nuclear arms race. These people worldwide are trying to steal other people's money. Again, it's really evil. So the term I really want to focus on, which is a mindset, is to have zero trust. Now, it might sound bad that, you don't trust anyone, but the fact is that you don't know who you're talking to, whether it's online, over the phone, in a text message, or an email. So, my first rule is you never answer unknown text messages. You never pick up the phone if it's an unknown number calling you. If it's an unknown email, you're not trying to click into that email because what they're trying to get you to do is go to a link that's either going to install a virus on your computer or get you to log into a fake website, which look very real, to then get the information and your credentials. So unfortunately, it's just so easy to spoof identities in 2025. With AI, where you can make someone sound like something else, you can create fake videos of people. There's so many different ways to make it seem like you are an authentic thing. And so you can't have trust that what you're seeing or hearing or reading is actually real unless you have some way to identify that who you're talking to is actually who they say they are. Your default in this zero trust mindset is to not do something. And so if someone is reaching out to you and trying to get you to do something, whether it's share information over the phone or they're claiming to be something, your first response should just to be not engage. If you can just not engage, that's the first way to get away from any type of scam. But the second rule is to actually really believe that this can happen to you. It's easy to think, well, that would never happen to me. You have to be under the assumption that the people that are trying to steal your money are sophisticated and they're smart. And so you have to understand that it can really happen to you. One of the things to call out is that in all of these scams, what they're going to try to do is create an emotional reaction in you. They're going to try to create anger or fear or make you worry about something. And they're going to create urgency to take an action because they want to get ahead of you thinking too critically about the situation and getting away. It's really like they're trying to get you hooked on something and then to pull you in to be able to get your information. So the first instinct is if somebody is contacting you and there's an emotional reaction for you to do something, just get away. Don't do it. Nothing is so urgent that you have to do something right now, although they're going to try to convince you of that. And you have to fight against that. If anything, if you're really afraid that actually what's happening is real, then hang up with that person, you know, get out of that email and then go to your bank directly. Talk to someone in person. Call the number that you know is who they say they are directly and get information from them. Another common thing is someone trying to get the two-factor authentication codes or personal details that we talked about already. So if someone contacts you and is asking you for these things, you would never give them. And so you'll see a lot of text messages from companies that try to remind people of this, where they say, we will never call and ask you for this number. But when you're in an urgent situation where there's anger or fear or worry on the line, if it's somebody claiming to be Fidelity and they're calling you and they're saying, hey, this is Fidelity's fraud department, and they start saying, hey, all this terrible stuff's happening and we need to get this information from you to stop you from losing all of your money. If you're ever worried that you might be in one of these situations or you have something in your gut that's kind of telling you something doesn't feel right, just disconnect, run away, get away from whatever that situation is, and then contact your financial provider directly, ideally in person. Okay, and then the last key step is to monitor what I call your financial security heartbeat. So just like an EKG machine in a hospital that's monitoring how you're doing, you need to be able to monitor for what's happening to your information. Like I said at the beginning, there's 360 million different people that were impacted by breaches in the last 5 years. So our information is constantly being leaked in different ways. And so you want to be able to know what information is out there. And there's two ways that I know of to do this. The first way is this website, haveibeenpwned.com. So you can go to this website, put in your email address or other information, and it's actually going to show you what personal information based on that search has been breached before. So if you've never looked this up before, it's really critical. If you have email address, let's say that you use for everything, go to this website and put in that email address. I would bet you a lot of money that somewhere that email address has been leaked. So another plug for Proton, I'm a big Proton fan, is you can automate a lot of this breach activity with something that they call dark web monitoring. So if you subscribe to this with your Proton email addresses or third-party email addresses, they will automatically alert you when a breach occurs. You should also set up some type of free credit alert service. I use Experian, Credit Karma, I've used before. Again, there's a lot of options for all the things that we're talking about in this video, so you might have personal preference, but at least this is just what I like to use. Experian kind of forces you to try to get to pay them money, and it's kind of annoying. But either way, they do send you information as soon as your credit score changes. So it's really key, in my opinion, to be able to monitor what's going on with your credit. Okay, and these next ones are just best practices that I've created over time that I could think of for this video. The first one is that you have alerts set up on all of your financial institutions. So I like to have maximal alerts. Like I want a text message, I want a phone call, I want an email when anything on my account happens, even if it's kind of annoying that I'm getting notified about stuff. I want to know about as soon as something happens so that if it's not me making the change, I can get on it quickly. One thing that you want to do is make sure that for these alerts, you have a filter set up, especially in email, so that if you get something from your financial provider, it's bolded and highlighted and favorited, and it's not sent to junk or hidden. One of the things that scammers will do is they will blast you with spam email. So you get thousands of emails into your email. to try to hide the different activity that they might be doing. So you want a way so that if that starts happening to you and your email address, that the email that you really need to see, which is whatever they're trying to do in your financial account, it's prioritized so that you see it. Okay, so the next one is go to your cell phone service. If you use your cell phone to get your two-factor codes, and make sure that you enable whatever extra security they have. A lot of cell phone providers don't have extra security. So, I guess you're just out of luck there. But if they do, you can research and see, what account security do I have that I can put in place? Maybe it's an extra code that you only know. Whatever security you can to lock down your cell phone service so that a hacker can't get into that way. All right, the next one is to consider creating an ID.me account. So ID.me is a service that government services use to validate that you are who you say you are. And so while it's important to minimize your digital footprint, one of the things that I like to focus on is making sure that if someone tried to impersonate me, that they can't impersonate key accounts that might be out there that I need access to. So, an example is there's IRS fraud where someone could get your information, go to irs.gov, and start claiming that they are you. And so then they're in your IRS account, maybe trying to get your tax return, that type of thing. So, I like to be proactive, have an ID.me account, have an account with the IRS so that nobody can try to take that account. The next one is you can consider freezing your credit at the three credit agencies. And so, what this is going to do is it's not going to allow a fraudster to use your personal information to try to open up a credit card or rack up debt or steal your identity. And then you can unfreeze that credit as you need it. So, let's say you wanted to apply for a home loan or a car or a credit card. You can call these three credit agencies, unlock your credit so that you can use it and then lock it again. So if you are not tech savvy, my recommendation is that you limit activity on the key devices that you have that have access to your financial accounts. So if you really wanted to take this to an extreme and you're not tech savvy and you're just scared of some of this stuff, my recommendation would be, get an iPad or get some type of device that you only do your specific financial accounts on, but don't do anything else on it. Don't try to click on links. Keep it secure so that, there's not a virus on it that's logging your activity and trying to get into your accounts. And on that note, make sure that you're protecting your devices. So keep them updated. Don't run software that is out of date. So when you get a new software update from Apple or on your phone or a new Windows update or new Mac update, always make sure you're keeping updated because these companies are trying to stay ahead of all of this stuff so that as bad stuff is discovered, they're fixing it. Okay, so that's about as comprehensive as I can get around financial security on what I've picked up over the last decade of focusing on this stuff. So I hope that you were able to pick up something in this video that might better be able to protect you. It is unfortunate that we have to be so alert to these types of things, but people are more desperate than ever, and there's just bad people out there that want to steal your money. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts or things that I missed, please share them with others on the channel in the comments below. A like or subscribe lets me know that this information is helpful for you. And if you're just getting started out, I released a video last week that talks about how to start setting up all of these accounts that we want to protect. It'll go over what you should start doing to get your financial picture set up. Best of luck, and I hope you have a nice weekend.